High five, IC. Mr. Kennedy here. I'm missing you all. I just wanted to make a little recap video. Should last about 5-10 minutes. Just going through what we tried to do at the end of last term on the rise of dictatorships in Europe between World War One and World War Two. Thanks to those of you that did the work from the textbook and uploaded it to the Teams page, and also well done to the people that tried to do the 365 quiz. I feel we need to go through this a little bit. It's interesting stuff, disturbing but interesting. So we'll go through this. The next topic's World War Two, so you can go ahead and start reading the textbook on that. You don't have to do the questions. But anyway, let's get started. So the textbook talks about the difference between democracy and dictatorship. Just make sure, I'm sure you're all aware, Luxembourg's a democracy. We have elections, we have rights, civil political rights, the right to vote, the right to say what you want, freedom of speech, the right to protest, the right to a fair trial if you're arrested. That's things we have in a democracy. So we have elections, we have a choice of government, but that's not everything you need in a democracy. You also need rights. Then, of course, you have dictatorships. These are political systems where they don't have rights. They don't have democracy. What they do have is strong leaders, very strong, who can do what they want. They can dictate what people do. So that's make sure you know that. Democracy, dictatorship. Now, the book then goes on to talk about the different dictatorships in Europe between World War One and World War Two, and it starts with the first big dictatorship, left-wing, communist dictatorship, Russia, the USSR, the Soviet Union. So there's the famous Soviet flag with the hammer for industrial workers, the sickle that represents the peasants, the agricultural workers. And that existed for a long time, from 1917 right up to 1990, 91. Led by Lenin originally, and then later, of course, the famous Uncle Joe, Joseph Stalin, one of the famous dictators of the 20th century. Quite a frightening guy. So, as you probably know, what is communism? It's a system that believes in equality. Nobody owns anything, no private property, that the state owns everything, really, the government, and they provide everything that the people need. And that idea comes from Marxism, from Karl Marx. Of course, it doesn't work that way in reality, but that's the idea. Everybody's equal. And you don't need to vote. You don't need elections. You just need the government to help the people. And that's it. The other ones, of course, is the right-wing fascist dictatorships, the ultra-nationalist dictators. Mussolini, the first one in Italy, there he is, Benito Mussolini, and then famously the Nazis in Germany, Adolf Hitler, 1933 right up to when he kills himself in 1945, the end of World War Two. So let's go into a bit of detail now. The book talks about Mussolini, the problems Italy's having after World War One. Even though Italy wins World War One, they're on the side of the victors. They have terrible problems after World War One. They don't get the land they felt they deserved from the treaties, peace treaties, and their economy's in big trouble. And Mussolini, he steps in and he takes over, and he sets up a dictatorship in 1922, where people have very few rights, but the state, the government, tries to help the people. As long as you don't disagree with the government, you're okay. But if you do disagree with the government, you're in big trouble. But the one that the book really focuses on is obviously the Nazis under Hitler in Germany, 1933 right up to 45. So it talks about the rise to power, the book, Hitler's childhood, how he's a soldier in World War One, and then Before that, he'd been a homeless artist in Vienna. Quite interesting stuff. But what really happens for Hitler is when he becomes involved in politics after World War One, um, he sets up this Nazi party, and he think people aren't really voting for the Nazis in the 1920s, but then this happens, the Great Depression. It's a big economic collapse. Um, Happens all over the world after the Wall Street crash in Germany, in America in 1929. And that Great Depression and the unemployment it causes and the desperation in Germany leads to quite a lot of German people voting for the Nazis. And eventually, 1933, Hitler becomes the leader of Germany. He's elected the leader of Germany. So the book talks about life in Nazi Germany. It looks at different things. The main one is that Nazi Germany is a police state. What does that mean? It means that you can't say what you want, that the police are very, very important, very powerful. So you've got the secret police, the Gestapo, you've got the SS, they're the ones that run the prison camps. It's very scary if you are against the Nazis or if you're considered to be against the Nazis. Very, very frightening place to live. Now, especially if you're one of these groups, so not just in Germany but anywhere in the world, Hitler felt there was a hierarchy of races with Aryans at the top. So that's basically your blonde-haired, blue-eyed Nordic people of Northern Europe. He felt they were superior to other people. Superior to Slavs from Eastern Europe, superior to Gypsies, superior to Jews. That's the group that the Nazis feel are inferior, the Untermensch. And this is an obsession of Hitler and the Nazis. And it's very frightening. So here's a picture, it's from Germany in the 30s, different groups based on race and the features, and they thought you could study this. It's called eugenics. And they thought that like I say, the Aryan Nordic people were superior to other groups. Very, very scary thing. And they put it into practice. And as you know, they go on to wipe out millions of Jews and Gypsies and Slavs during World War II. Now, the other thing the book talks about a lot is young people in Germany. Hitler wanted to control them, to brainwash them, to make them loyal young Nazis. And here's a picture of some boys in the Hitler Youth. So boys had to join the Hitler Youth, girls had to join the League of German Maidens, and the boys were trained up to be soldiers, to be tough, to be strong. The girls were trained up to be mothers. School was all about the Nazis. Even a maths lesson, they get it in there. Science, history, of course. Loads of PE and sport because they wanted the young people to be fit and strong. So that's a big, big thing. Women in Nazi Germany were very important. They were expected to be mothers. So no feminism. Women weren't expected to work. They were expected to stay at home, have children, to raise future soldiers, to raise them to be good Nazis. So you can see here a Nazi propaganda poster. This is the National Socialists of Germany, Nazis. And there's the mother there. Traditional German dress, no makeup, no fancy clothes, quite old-fashioned. There's the dad. And you know, it was all about tradition, old-fashioned values. The other thing the book talks about is how did the Nazis make themselves popular? Of course, no elections in Germany, but they didn't want people rising up against them. So how they did that, the Nazis, was just by making ordinary Germans happy. If you didn't mind not having freedom of speech, if you didn't mind that you couldn't listen to jazz music, that you had to go to Hitler Youth meetings if you were a young person, then life actually got better in some ways. They solved unemployment. Millions of Germans had been unemployed in the early 1930s because of the Great Depression. The Nazis fixed that. They did it through public works programs, building new motorways, building tunnels, engineering projects, dams. Um, and also they made Germans feel proud. They started to reverse the Treaty of Versailles, taking back bits of land. And then, of course, the first few years of World War II, Germany's really winning. And many Germans liked that. And it's a fact. So the book talks about that. And here's a picture of the VW Beetle, the Volkswagen, the people's car. This was a Nazi project. And many Germans felt the economy was improving. Of course, hardly anyone actually did ever get one of these cars. But enough was done to make Germans feel proud. And it's something we can't hide from, that quite a lot of Germans actually were happy that Hitler was improving Germany. Plenty weren't, but some were. And all this was based on propaganda, censorship, getting inside people's minds. So there's Joseph Goebbels, the head of propaganda under the Nazis, and he was in charge of making sure there were posters of Hitler. There were you went to the cinema, it was all about how great the Nazis were. You opened a newspaper, it was all about how great the Nazis were. And they also censored things, so you couldn't read books by Jewish authors, by communist authors, anything that didn't fit art, theatre, anything that didn't fit into the traditional old-fashioned German values was out. So jazz music, couldn't listen to it because it was a black American music. Swing music, dance music, once again, not considered to be what they wanted. So, scary stuff, but it happened, and you need to know about it. And all of this is going to lead to World War II. So the Nazis get into power in 1933. Throughout the 1930s, Hitler's ignoring the Treaty of Versailles. He's rearming the German army. He ignores this 100,000 soldiers rule from Versailles. He ignores the fact they can't have an air force, that they can't have submarines, and he starts to take back little bits of land. And of course, in 1930, and we let him do it. Britain lets him do it because they don't want another war. But eventually, 1939, Hitler goes too far. He invades Poland, and Britain declares war on Germany. World War II begins. So make sure you've read pages 80 to 83 in the textbook. We'll probably try and have a little test on that next week. So it talks about what Hitler wanted. He wanted Germany to be strong again. He wanted all German speakers in Europe to be united, Austrians, Luxembourgers even. And he wanted to head east for Lebensraum, living space. He wanted to take over Eastern Europe. And it also talks about why we let him do that. That's called appeasement. We didn't want another war, so we let Hitler rearm, and then eventually we talked about September 39, Germany invades Poland, World War II begins. So that's where we're headed next, World War II. Eventually we'll do a family history project on that. And so I'll see you again on Friday. Make sure you've read pages 80 to 83. And yeah, take care of yourselves and speak again soon.